Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires. There's a reason why it got that label. Historically, no country on the face of the earth or any foreign invader has ever successfully defeated the region. From Alexander the Great to the British Empire to the Soviets and currently to the U.S-coalition forces. But there's a particular area within Afghanistan that has garnered much attention, but is sorely underreported by the media, and there's reason for it. It's the Helmond Province. The Helmond Province is approximately about 20,000 square miles, or 58,500 kilometers. And it's home to about 1,000 villages and 1.4 million residents. It is south of the country, and it is also home to 42% of the world's opium trade. It is the largest square miles. I'm talking about square miles, the largest area in the world regarding opium production. But Afghanistan also in this area has a lot more in regards to trade with opium, sesame, wheat, potato, cauliflower, apricots, grapes. And so the local Pashtun farmers, as well as neighboring townspeople, will come here and to commiserate and trade, and this is how the currency of Afghanistan survives. But the area itself has come under fire since the U.S. invasion of 2001, in which in the late 90s, under Taliban control, when it was fighting against Ahmed Shah Massoud and Mustafa Hamid at one point, that's the northern area of the country, Mullah Omar knew about the poppy fields and burned much of the crops from a period of 1997 and 1999. In fact, one could argue that this was actually the first war on drugs that was successful. But after 2000 and 2001, when the U.S. invasion started in 2001, the opium trade became very valuable. The Taliban, as well as drug traffickers from Pakistan, especially in Jalalabad, Islamabad, became frequent visitors into the area. And this is how the drug trade paid off for weaponry, guns, and the CIA became involved. And this is a big reason why we have had British and U.S. troops guarding this area. It's not a very military strategic area, but I don't have to say the obvious, that it is actually a lucrative area to pay off. And this is, of course, black operations. Intelligence agencies like the Pakistan ISI, the CIA, British MI6 can use the drug trade to pay for operations that they couldn't get going before their congressional leaders, where they couldn't get money to pay for these illegal operations. In 2006, Operation Mountain Thrust, which was a combined NATO-Afghan mission targeted at the Taliban, which was located south of the country, districts like Nawaz, Nowzad, and Gamsir, fought the Taliban for control of this area, in that they could surround the Helmond Province. the Taliban was very aggressive to the British forces and the coalition forces later on. And so there was a stalemate in this period, in which Afghan U.S. puppet Hamid Karzai, who was the Afghan president at this time, requested that the British troops and Taliban order a ceasefire at this point, in which they did. There was no clear winner. And so during this time, we saw a change of leadership within the Taliban as well. Mullah Omar became more insular, and it is reported that he passed away a couple of years after that. It's not reportedly known when he died, but the year in which it was announced was 2013, April 23rd, 2013. And it is reported that he died right near a U.S. station base. Talk about living in the lion's den. Here's a man who was wanted by the U.S. for well over 20 years. And so he passes away just a few kilometers away from a U.S. Military base. In June of 2009, there was Operation Panther's Claw, which was launched with the stated aim of securing control over the canal and river crossings to the Helmond Province. This was one of the main Taliban strongholds. And this was during a Afghan presidential election. Approximately 4,000 U.S. Marines pushed forward in a major offense to liberate the area from Taliban. And the operation itself failed. And so another operation took place the following month in July, Operation Khanjar or Operation Dagger, which was the first operation led by newly elected President Barack Obama, in which he requested 21,000 troops to enter the country and to fight for control of the region. And you're wondering, why on earth are they fighting the Taliban in this area and not in Kandahar or Kabul? Because Helmond Province, again, is home to the major, largest, most important area in the country, and it's the opium fields. It's where they could cut off the financial supply to the Taliban, also to groups like Jaish Mohammed and other drug trafficking mujahideen or tribal leaders in Pakistan from coming into the country and continuing to supply arms to the Taliban and also to play for black operations. I don't want to keep repeating on this, but yes, this is a very important area. And like I said before, it wasn't a very important strategic area in terms of military strategy. And so up until this time, the country itself continues to be still under the control of the Taliban in Afghanistan. And so we are still there in the country itself, and it's the longest conflict in U.S. history, 19 years. And right now, as we speak, the Taliban not only have to worry about U.S. forces, but the rising forces of the Islamic State, which have now entered the country the last 5 years. And this is a huge problem, not just for the Taliban, but for also U.S. forces. currently, the United States and the Taliban have a stalemate. It is reported that Donald Trump, the bloated buffoon of a president, actually is the first president in the conflict, U.S. conflict with the country, to actually have a meeting, a peace deal meeting with the Taliban and pulling troops out of the country. In fact, this is the first insinuation to such a promise. But since Trump has reportedly lost, it seems that Biden will now be the new president. And if Trump doesn't pull out the troops, Biden, who has outfitted his cabinet so far with former CIA and Pentagon corporate industrialists, CEOs, in his cabinet, it is for certain that he's also promised that we'll stay in the conflict. In fact, just 2 days ago, Mitch McConnell, Republican congressional leader, has stated on the House floor that to pull out of Afghanistan would be a mistake. So it seems that no matter what, even if it's Trump or Biden, we're staying in Afghanistan for the foreseeable future, which is a mistake. But you can understand why. And when you have pressure from the CIA, you have pressure from the War Department about continuing the conflict because it serves their general interest, you could see that there's great pressure upon our elected officials to want to stay in the region because it's beneficial for them to do so. And this is the problem that we face in this country, that no matter who you elect, the policies regarding the Pentagon or our geopolitics regarding foreign lobbies like Saudi Arabia or Israel or corporate industrialists, the military-industrial programs, Raytheon, Boeing, LG3 Technologies, even smaller companies, people who have millions, tens of millions of dollars invested at stake. And these congressional leaders that we elect from the state, local, even bigger federal level, they have a percentage too. They make money from this. These are people who have a corporate stake in these large military corporations. And so with that in mind, you have this branch out effect of corruption. The Pentagon is probably the most egregious agency when it comes to waste management. I mean, they waste not just millions, but billions of dollars in creating missiles and bombs that they don't even use, or they just shoot into the hills as target practice. Not to mention RPGs, machine guns, handguns, bullets, and other military armaments that they create en masse. And so this production, you got production lines, managers in these companies, these warehouses, delivery trucks, delivery drivers. All this comes into play, and it's millions of dollars, billions at stake, billions, not even millions, billions of dollars at stake, because there are dozens and dozens of military corporations I didn't even bother to name, and also all the other hundreds and thousands of individuals that get a percentage, that are stakeholders, CEOs, shareholders of these companies. And most of these people are high-level people that you help to vote in. And so when these people promise you that they're going to create a peace deal with Afghanistan, so to speak, or Iraq, Syria, Libya, for examples, and these congressional leaders that say, oh, we'll have less affluence or less influence from Israel and Saudi Arabia when it comes to these lobbies that they are under the gun, so to speak. They promise you false promises. These will never come to fruition. And that's because the mass public are ignorant. And let's just be quite honest. And, they don't stop voting. And it seems like every 4 years, when they make these promises, they suddenly forget, and then you complain. And then after 2 years, you tend to forget about it. Or you may complain even further, and then when it comes for an election, you say, well, you know what? I'm going to jump ship and change parties. Well, that's not going to work. Look what happened with Trump, right? You thought Trump was a slobbering dauphin. Here's a real imbecile. But you thought Biden was a progressive, and you were fooled. Biden is hardly a progressive. If you did your homework, you would have found out about that he probably never lived up to that name in his 40 years of service to the U.S. federal government. Just take a look at his cabinet. Look who he's appointing. And they're neocon warhawks. And that's who the neocons infiltrated 10 years prior. The Democratic Party, they jump ship. And they do this so they won't be noticed. In fact, Obama administration was much more hawkish than the previous Bush administration. In fact, you have Bush delegates who are actually quite jealous that Obama was getting away with certain things like constant surveillance, writing a blank check, drone strikes in 7 Arab countries that led to the deaths of thousands of Arab peoples. These drone strikes aren't always precision-like, and creates enemies all throughout. The destabilization of Syria. And they lost there because Assad's still president. But look who they funded. In 2013, what did Obama do? Obama actually gave the order, which was Timber Sycamore, which was a CIA-led operation in which King Hussein of Jordan, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, and Barack Obama, who was hesitant at first to go along with the project, but they persuaded him to do so, to use this operation for the CIA to fund and train members of a ultra-Orthodox terrorist sect in Syria, al-Nusra. Tahrir al-Sham is their current name. These are terrorists to try and overthrow the president of Bashar al-Assad, who's a dictator, but a dictator that has control of the country. And look what happened in Libya. We had a dictator named Muammar Gaddafi. We have deposed him as president. He was killed. Now look at the country itself. It's now in a state of sectarian conflict in which you have a number of these warlords trying to vie for control of the country, as well as the government, or the fractured government that's fighting off not just these warring tribes and warlords, but also the Islamic State and other ultra-Orthodox organizations. And there's open air slave trading, human beings being sold as slaves in the north of the country. And so that's what's awaiting Syria if Assad is suddenly ousted as president. And that's exactly what the Pentagon would like, because it continues this war on terror. Oh, we're fighting to liberate the country. Well, you had a country that was already liberated, and you deemed those leaders like Assad, like Gaddafi, who weren't involved with the U.S-coalition. They were part of the Arab World League, and you deemed them terrorists. Same thing for Saddam Hussein. Not to say that these were some of the most brutal leaders in the Arab countries, but if you tried them in a tribunal without interfering with your military and bombing these countries to almost inhabitable non-existence, we wouldn't have these problems. In fact, you could just pressure the Arab World League to try these Arab leaders in a court of law and have them arrested, and then have their own countries replace them with leaders and not impose Western-backed leaders. Because that's exactly what the U.S. federal government wants. They want puppet leaders for these Arab countries, just like they did in Iran. 1953, the CIA assassinated democratically elected President Mohammad Mossadegh. He was deposed. It was a CIA-led operation. It came out years later. Who did they impose? Who did they delegate as leader, the president of the country? Revla Pavlavi, whose nickname was escape my mind. The Shah of Iran. He was a Western-backed leader, in which create discontent within the public because they knew exactly what he was. Hamid Karzai, who I just brought up in just a couple of minutes ago, Afghanistan, Western-backed puppet. The Soviets did this in Afghanistan in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s. Hafizullah Amin, Nur Taraki Muhammad, Barbak Kamal. And so countries do this so they can take control of the region, in fact, and in which they can take advantage and impose their foreign policy. It's how you expand an empire. That's exactly what the United States is trying to do. And so that is the reason why Afghanistan is so important. And that's just one reason. There's a multitude of factors here. Not to say that we do have elected officials who are blind to see that they're trying to liberate a country which cannot be liberated. It's never happened. It's why they hold up to the name Afghanistan, the graveyard of empire.